The pandemic has had a massive impact on childcare worker Erin Brooks and her young family's finances.
We started to stress about what was going to happen and how we're going to make the next mortgage repayment.
With her hours cut and her husband recently off work, the couple chose to withdraw about $20,000 from their super funds as part of the government's COVID-19 early release scheme.
We looked at getting some super out to pay for at least a month's worth of mortgage. We've just taken out the necessities now to get us through life and COVID.
People have dipped into their superannuation, accessed superannuation through the early release scheme to pay down their debts, to pay down their mortgage, their credit card debts, their household bills, and also to build a buffer within their savings.
So far, more than 2.5 million Australians have withdrawn over $34 billion from their super savings. But that short-term gain could lead to financial pain in retirement.
They take their funds out now, so that means that they lose the effect of compound interest over many decades.
According to analysis from Sydney University's Business School, withdrawing $20,000 from super amounts to $50,000 less in 30 years.
Those who get quickly back into the workforce and are able to keep earning might be able to replace those funds quickly. For others, if they're looking at extended periods of unemployment, then it will be quite difficult to replace the savings.
In 10 years' time, nobody's going to turn around and say this was my idea. A short-term measure to provide privatised stimulus to the economy because the government wouldn't do the hard work itself. Long-term cost to individuals and to the budget down the track. Absolutely devastating.
You have to consider what the alternative might be. It might be that people would go to a payday lender, or it might be that they would sell a valuable asset like a car in order to keep themselves afloat. For so many Australians, the early release of super scheme has been a lifeline.
Australians struggling financially can continue to access up to $10,000 of their super until the end of the year.
The 10 grand was absolutely critical to keep paying the bills. The bills didn't stop because COVID was there. Was that just boundary trees soaking in? Yeah.
Matthew Moat partly used the funds to set up his new business, connecting Australian winemakers with the latest innovations in the sector.
It was more like, for my business, a bit of seed money to get things moving.
Matthew is adamant that allowing people like him to dip into their super was the right call, but he is planning to put the money back in the next 12 months.
I think super is really important. I don't have a ton of it. I am only sort of, I guess, mid-career, but you do understand the compounding impacts of superannuation and what it can mean for you in years to come.
The early super drawdown comes at a time when government backbenchers are pushing to delay a scheduled increase in compulsory super contributions to 12%. That prompted the architect of workplace super, former Prime Minister Paul Keating, to lash out.
The government is gearing up to use the COVID health emergency to destroy the superannuation system. It's a great litmus test. It's a dipstick into whether the government has any ideas about the future, whether they have any ideas about equity or decency, is grand theft, Liberal Party style, against the working population of Australia.
We're in two minds about that rise when we have the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Philip Lowe, when we have ACOS, when we have the Grattan Institute and indeed industry superannuation themselves coming out and saying that that rise in the superannuation guarantee will come at the cost of wages and wage growth.
Frankly, no worker expects to get a wage increase next year. The only people who are going to get anything are the people who are going to get the superannuation guarantee increase.
For those approaching retirement, dipping into their super nest egg early can have a big impact.
Indeed, for people that are close to retirement, it's very difficult to put those funds back in.
So we're going to do Thai chicken red curry. You want to cut the chicken, I can wash the broccoli.
I could continue to try and struggle on, but I was watching my bank account deplete and I got down to sort of, getting down close to ground zero.
And you put that in right at the end so it stays nice and green.
57-year-old Justine Coleman was already unemployed when the pandemic struck. She reluctantly withdrew $10,000 from her retirement savings.
I'm glad I did, but the reality is I had no choice. I wish I'd had a choice. And it upsets me, to be honest, that so many of us were forced into dipping into our super.
If we allow people to keep removing funds from their super, that's a fundamental change to the way that it operates and the way that we think about it. Whether that's what we want the super system to do is a question for our leaders.
I don't want to be a burden to my children. I don't want to be a burden to society, but the reality is there's thousands of women like me out there, and I don't know what the future holds. It's really frightening.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.